Well, I have 2 o'clock on my side. So let's go ahead and get started. Hi, everybody. I hope you're having a great day so far. Thank you for joining us for another Homeschool Buyers Co-op webinar. We're glad to have you. Today's webinar is going to be School at Home Made Easier, the magic of focusing on strengths. My name is Shirley Miller. I'm a team member at the Homeschool Buyers Co-op, and I'd like to welcome Mariaemma Willis. Mariaemma is the co-founder of LearningSuccess Institute and co-author of the Self-Portrait Power Traits Assessment and the books, What to Do When They Don't Get It, Simple Teaching Techniques That Work Like Magic, Learning Doesn't Have to Hurt, The Magic of Relationship in Teaching and Learning, and Discover Your Child's Learning Style. So before I hand things over to Mariaemma, we just have a few housekeeping points to cover. So the webinar is scheduled for the next hour, so we'll have plenty of time for questions. Since everyone has joined in listen-only mode, please feel free to submit your questions in the Q&A box at the and at the end of the webinar, we'll go ahead and answer as many questions as we can. I mentioned earlier that we have a few poll questions, so please go ahead and take the time to answer those as well. We do have a fill-in question. That question would be, if you'd like to answer, is what is your biggest concern? We'd like to know that ahead of time. So go ahead and type your answer into the chat box or the Q&A box, and we'll get to those at the end as well. So with that being said, I'll hand it over to you, Mariaemma.
Okay, thank you. And by the way, there is a question already. Someone wants to know if there will be access to the recording. I think the answer is yes, right?
Yes, of course, there will be access. This is recorded, and it will be, the recording will be uploaded to our website as well as sent out in the email. So don't worry if you miss anything or come in later. This is will be recorded and provided to you.
All right, thank you, Shirley.
Welcome.
Well, I'm very happy to be here. I've been working with the Homeschool Buyers Co-op over many years and have done several of these over the years, these webinars. And also, there's a page that I'll tell you about at the Homeschool Buyers website that has more information so that you can try to match the materials, curriculum, etc., with your child's learning style. And I used to review products for the Homeschool Buyers Co-op. So some of them are still on there, and it'll say like, oh, this is good for tactile, or this is good for this disposition, and so on. So might want to check that out. Okay, so here we go. First, a few little background things, actually some myths that I want to talk about. So here's a cartoon, and the guy sitting there, of course, these are animals, and the guy is saying, for a fair selection, everybody has to take the same exam. Please climb that tree. So of course we know that's ridiculous, because there are animals that don't climb and can't climb. So of course they would get Fs, and maybe some of them could kind of scamper up a tiny bit. I don't know what their grade would be, D, maybe C, etc. So it's ridiculous when we do it with animals, but in a way that is what's happening in the one-size-fits-all classroom. So I know that most people on this webinar are homeschoolers. Maybe we have a few teachers too in a classroom, which would be great, because all of these principles can be applied in the classroom, and we've worked with whole schools. But this is kind of the mindset. And so even if you are homeschooling, you probably went to a traditional school of some kind. And if that's so, then little tiny voices in your brain will pop up and say, oh, but so-and-so's doing that, and my friend's daughter's doing that, and aren't they all supposed to be doing this by this time? So I want to bring that up right up front. And Einstein, this is a quote from Einstein: everybody's a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid. And unfortunately, that is what happens to many, many, many students in the traditional school system or school setting. So are we going to focus on strengths or weaknesses? And this is a quote from the book, The Power of Focus. Some of you might know Jack Canfield and Mark Victor Hansen. They're famous for writing the Chicken Soup for the Soul books. And they are also speakers and sort of success gurus. And so this is from one of their books. Often children are told to focus on their weaker subjects and not spend so much time on the ones they do well in. Wrong. This does not give you a competitive edge. It just keeps you average. In fact, it's an absolute insult to your integrity to major in minor things. And the thing is that people in business who are successful business people in a good way, not by cheating or anything like that, but they're just really good business people. They understand this. And in fact, studies have shown that people who get C's in school, traditional setting, are usually the ones that become the CEOs and the entrepreneurs, because they're not so hung up on the A's and B's, and they are focusing on their strengths. They're focusing on what works for them and what will bring them success. And so that's part of what this is about today, is how do you focus on your child's strengths and still give them what they need, for some of the traditional school subjects that you want to provide for them. So these are some more quotes. This is Arthur Levine. He was president of Columbia Teachers College when he said this: in the future, the teacher will no longer be the talking head at the front of the classroom, but the expert in children's learning styles, comparable to a medical doctor. That is huge. And so you, as the teachers, you at homeschooling, you are the teachers. So you would be the expert in your children's learning styles and continue to learn more and more about that, so that you can help them be more and more effective. So I believe that a primary job of parents is to guide the children in discovering their unique gifts. And your children's gifts are their blueprints for life success. It's like their guide to discerning who they are and to becoming confident adults and eager to contribute in the world. But a lot of students feel like this, whether they're at home or in a classroom. So Dennis the Menace says, I got a lot of answers, but no one ever asks the right questions. And there's so many kids who know tons of stuff, but it's not in the curriculum. So the things that they're really interested in, don't come up, and they feel left out. So what can we do about that? All right, we're getting to it. The first thing is not to discourage them. And this often begins in school because they're judged by how they're doing in academics. And really, those self-images stay with you forever. Because I know that some of you in this webinar right now are thinking of your third grade teacher, fifth grade teacher, or whoever, or maybe all of your teachers, and thinking, I had a terrible time in school. I do not want that to happen to my kids. So if you learn growing up that you're not very smart, or you're not good enough, you have nothing to contribute, or you're failing at everything, then that's what you will believe as an adult. And it really hampers adults. I see adults all the time who are held back by their beliefs that they came to believe when they were in school. So these are the kinds of things we want to avoid. Saying things like, if your spelling doesn't improve, you can't be on that team. Those are great ideas, but your writing is messy. You need to be more responsible and study harder. Oh, finally, you got a B. Next time, get an A. I know that some homeschoolers use a grading system, and that's fine, but we have to use it in a better way. No playing outside until you finish your homework. Well, you might be good at whatever, but that won't get you far in life. And if you don't take school seriously, you'll never get anywhere. I'm telling you, teachers have said this to kids in preschool and kindergarten and I know them personally. So this is not far-fetched. I'm not making this up. Other things you want to avoid, you have to go to college. You have to get in a top university. We expect you to become whatever, a lawyer, a doctor, but it could also be the family business, widgets you're making, or a computer consultant, whatever. We need you in the family business. There it is. Or forget about whatever. All the good jobs are in technology or whatever it happens to be at the time. That's not a real job. How will you support yourself? You want to do what? I've had so many students. By the way, I've worked with homeschool students and coached parents and students for, I don't know, 30 years, I think now. And when the kids say, I'm going to be a professional skateboarder, and the parent says, what? You want to do what? I never say that. And I coach parents to not to say that, because first of all, there are professional skateboarders and other things that you might think, are not real jobs. And they make a lot of money. So who's to say that your child won't be able to do that? But the other thing is, so many things that kids come up with are just passing, fleeting things. And you want to acknowledge that that's an interest at that time. So just, oh, wow, that's interesting. Let's find out. What do you need to do to be a professional skateboarder? And then you can go from there. So I don't have time today, to go into detail on every single one of these things. I wish I did, but you can always contact me if you want more information about some of these or more, or put the questions into the chat. If you come up with questions as I'm talking. Okay, so some kids make it in spite of hearing these kinds of things, but the majority don't. This happens to be a high school report card of John Gurdon. He was a winner of the 2012 Nobel Prize in Physiology and Medicine. And the report said his work has been far from satisfactory. Several times he's been in trouble because he will not listen, but will insist on doing his work in his own way. I believe he has ideas about becoming a scientist. On his present showing, this is quite ridiculous. It would be a sheer waste of time, both on his part and those who have to teach him. So that speaks for itself. And of course, we know there are many, many stories like this. Einstein was one of them, and lots of other people, not just scientists. What can we do to fix it if we already have said some of these things? There's a question there in the chat. So just don't do it anymore. Just don't do it anymore and start talking in a different way. And you can even say, you know what? I was scared when you said this, or I've just been so afraid that, I had a terrible time in school, if that's true, and I don't want you to, or I'm really anxious about whether you'll be able to get a good job, whatever it is, just tell the truth and then say, but I see now that is not a good way to talk about this. So whatever you're interested in, I support you. Let's find out about it. And you'll be amazed at how your kids will react. So here's the other side. This is another thing you can do to fix it. Start giving these kinds of positive messages. I love how creative you are. You're so funny. You make me laugh. If that's what you choose, I'll help you get there. Let's figure out if college is right for you, or which college. Let's come up with ideas to improve spelling. And by the way, I'm thinking that many of you out there are not shocked at a sentence like, let's figure out if college is right for you, because it's not right for everybody. And not everybody has to go to college, even today. So that's another thing to think about. All right, let's come up with ideas to improve your spelling. How about if you take a break? These are all positive messages. And here's sort of an ultimate focusing on the positive. This is in a traditional school setting. So the teacher says Sarah needs to work on her handwriting, and the mom is thinking, my child's going to be a doctor, because we know, of course, that doctors have messy handwriting. So how do you encourage a kid who lacks motivation in schoolwork, period? This kid would rather do social media all day. Let's continue with this, because I'm hoping that in the course of the talking about their strengths, you will see things that you can do. But hold on to this question. So if it's not being answered for you, bring it up again. Okay, so this is how we focus on strengths. We call this power traits for life. And it's like adjustable seats, like in the car and an airplane, whatever. You have to adjust the seat for you, right? Otherwise, you can't drive if the seat is way back and you have short legs, or you need the seat to come up, or whatever. This is like adjustable seats for learning. Everybody needs something different. Now I'm going to put these on, and they're going to be like really quick, but we're going to go into detail on each one in the slides that are coming up. So these are the areas of our self-portrait assessment, which, by the way, is sold on Homeschool Buyers Co-op. And I'll give you the link later because it's a very special price when you buy it through the co-op. So you do not want to buy it on my website or the Reflective Ed website. You want to buy it on the Homeschool Buyers website. So these are the 5 areas: dispositions, modalities, talents, interests, and environment. And here are the lists underneath each one of those sections. So now I'm going to go through these. So you don't have to worry about like memorizing what's here. Okay, first thing, disposition power traits. Those are our learning personalities. What others see about us really early age, 2 or 3 years old. You know that sometimes you've said, or somebody said, oh, that little kid's gonna be a lawyer. Look at him debate already. He's 3 years old. Or somebody else is already like really drawing, sketching, and doing all kinds of creative art stuff. And so it's those kinds of things that show up very early. And this is what our dispositions, these are what our dispositions are. And they affect how we learn, work, and communicate. So the spontaneous disposition, their main thing is move. I gotta move. And fun and games are what get them motivated. The curious disposition, questioning, that's their main thing. And they love to discover and tinker. Supportive, interact, collaborate, discuss, work with others. Imaginative, wonder is their main thing, and creating and imagining. Okay, I put that down there. Maybe you guys can guess why. Because that's the one that we want everybody to be in school, whether it's regular school or homeschool, because this is what's happening here. Spontaneous kids that need to move a lot often are labeled hyperactive. The curious and the imaginative are often labeled ADD because they're a lot inside their heads and they kind of drift away when they're talking, and it makes them think about something else. And it's not that they weren't paying attention, but now they're off on, you know, discovering the next spaceship or something. That's what gives them their genius. And then supportive people, you often hear that they're disruptive, or they talk too much, or they're into everybody's business. They want to discuss with the other kids and siblings, or whatever the setting is. But the organized people, those are the people we totally love in a school setting. It's a perfect disposition for structure, step-by-step planning, getting your assignments done on time. All of that fits. Now, let's talk about all these dispositions. Here are the lost potentials, because the majority of inventors, scientists, entrepreneurs, musicians, poets, philosophers, artists, creative people, They're generally these dispositions. Okay. And these are the students, unfortunately, who, as I said, are often labeled all these things: ADD, ADHD, dyslexic, learning disabled. They experience failure almost daily. Now, maybe not in homeschool, okay? But if you're following a traditional curriculum and are worried because they don't want to do it, or they're not doing well, that's experiencing failure, because they know, especially if they have siblings who are great at doing that traditional program, they're going to feel like failures. And it could be happening every day, and you might not even really know it. They don't realize how smart they are. They don't know they have unlimited possibilities, sorry. And they can grow up believing they have nothing to contribute. Now, here's an example of meeting different needs for the dispositions. So the first one is, that's the little icon for the curious that we use. So if you were having a study about the oceans, the curious person might invent, draw, or make a new kind of sea creature and adapt it to an underwater environment. So they're inventing something. The next one is the organized. Well, the organized usually likes to do workbooks and worksheets or listing things and that, that kind of research. So they might just list the major oceans and seas and write 6 important facts about each one. The imaginative is next. Draw, paint, make a scrapbook, collage to show what you're learning about. The supportive is next. They could work with 2 or 3 other people on a project of some kind. And the spontaneous, the one that needs to move, write a rap song, do a skit, do a demo, that kind of thing, where there's movement involved. Oh, that's the same question. Okay. All right. The next area is modality. This is our information processing equipment, we like to call it. It's like the best way for the information to come into your brain. What's the best way to take it in? And this is what's normally thought of as learning styles, by the way. When people say learning styles, you usually think, oh, are they auditory? Are they visual? Are they tactile? But we have these 5 areas, and we believe they all make up learning style and and what we call power traits. It's your strengths. So we're looking at these 5 areas of disposition: the modalities, the interests, the talents, and the environment. And then we even further categorize the modalities, which nobody else does, but it's really important because there are different types. So for auditory, there are 2 kinds. There's the listening and the verbal. So listening is that you just need to hear the voice of others. So it's self-explanatory. If I'm talking, that's a good way for you to get information. So if we didn't have the PowerPoint, sorry, some of you might be okay with that, with me just talking, but some of you would not. Hold on a second, I need some water. Okay. So, and this could include audiobooks, lectures, or even videos. And for some people who are strictly auditory, they would even kind of close their eyes or knit or do puzzles while they're just listening, because it's the listening part that works for them. Now, the verbal is very interesting. This is needing to hear your own voice. And you know how some people talk to themselves? Maybe that's you. So if this is the case, kids can be really hampered, and because, especially in a classroom, you're not supposed to talk out loud, right? So if you're needing to read, so I'll give you an example. Sometimes there are worksheets, with the instructions, and the student doesn't get it. So it goes up, whether it's home or school, and goes up to the teacher. I don't understand this. And the teacher or parent says, well, read it. So the child reads it out loud and goes, oh, I get it. And they go sit down and do it. And then the next one comes up and they get up again. I don't get this. And that can keep going on. But what happens is that the teacher is concluding that the kid is just wanting to bounce up and down. And that might be true for someone that needs to move. But if they understand it when they start to talk out loud, that is the clue. So we want to encourage them, if that is their style, to read out loud, whether they're reading a textbook, a novel, or whatever it is. And other ways of doing that is to teach it or explain it to somebody else, because then you're talking, or to discuss it with others. So if it's a place like, if you're in a library and you can't like really talk out loud, but the kids can learn to talk softly to themselves. Eventually, they don't even really need to, they can be just kind of whispering to themselves, and they can learn how to do that. But at first, really encourage them to read it out loud. So if you have several kids at home and that would be distracting, that's another thing. Talk about everybody's styles and what they need and how you can all work together to cooperate to meet as many needs as possible for each one, including the parents or whoever else lives there. So the one child that needs to read out loud might have a corner or another room, or the others might put on headphones. So those are the kinds of things you can talk about. And it's such great teaching for when they're adults, right? Because you're going to be on the job, or you're going to be in your own family. And this teaches, it teaches tolerance, understanding, how to speak up for what you need, how to respect what others need, and how to collaborate and work together. So 85% of traditional classroom instruction basically requires excellent listening skills, but 22% of learners, about 22% have these skills. So let's see what the next one is. Picture modality. So this is the visual. And again, we have more than one. So the picture modality is what it is. They need pictures of some kind. Charts can count as pictures, graphs, images, maps, even videos. But here's the thing, flashcards with words on them do not work for a picture learner. Words are not pictures. So if any of you, because this still goes on in classrooms, are having your kids write their spelling words over and over, the ones that they don't know, stop it. It's not going to work. They might learn a few, but in the long run, it doesn't work. Because otherwise, all the kids, especially the people that I can think of all the kids in my classrooms over the years when I'm talking about when I was in school, all of elementary, I was a great speller. And I remember the ones who weren't, they had to write them over 100 times in a Catholic school, by the way, at that time, 100 times for each word. They often missed recess, they missed lunch, they missed everything because they were still doing it after school. It took so long. Well, all those people should be excellent spellers. They're not. So if you're one of those that that you had to do that too, and you still consider yourself, not such a great speller, that will not work. There are things that will, but that won't. This is the print modality. It's also visual, but it's very different from picture. This one is that's what it is. It's reading. So for them, flashcards are good, textbooks, newspapers, anything where you read. 95% of school studies, and again, we're talking about traditional, require excellent print processing skills. About 14% of students are print learners. And see, nowadays we don't have any excuse because there are audiobooks, there are videos, there's the internet, there's YouTube, there all of these things. And I know that most of you probably don't want your kids just to be on the computer all day, but let's use it wisely as a tool that really can work, especially for students who are not print learners. And then there are the movement modalities. These are the tactile kinesthetic. The whole body, that's what it says, build something, be in the experience. Hands-on, take apart, build, make something. Sketching, draw and doodle. So sketching, we don't hear about this because most people don't have it in their assessments. The sketching modality is the student that, well, if you have a doodler in your house, or if you're a doodler, then you understand it. It's that as you're listening, you need to doodle, draw pictures, or even just designs. And the sketching learner can learn to use sketching not only to help them focus and listen, if they're not a listening learner, but also for specific learning. For example, math word problems. If they can sketch it out, that word problem, then they can see it and what it means. And by sketching it out, I don't mean that you would have to, like be an artist. You would just like do stick figures or little circles or whatever for what the word problem is saying. Reading comprehension. A lot of students need to doodle or kind of draw. If they do draw, I used to have a student who would draw cartoon-like sequences of what he was reading because it helped him understand it and then also remember it in case he had to take a test for it. So we have a question. Could you show the slide with the ideas of positive things to say again so I can write them down? You will be able to look at it again. If we have time, I'll do it at the end. But this is being recorded. So they'll see all the slides, right? Shirley?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Yes, they'll
So
be able to access
everything. You'll be able to write down anything that you want.
Mm-hmm.
So 50 to 60% of students are whole body hands-on learner. So that's at least half, and sometimes more than half. So we really need to pay attention and meet these needs because these are a lot of people. And actually, this is in the population, 50 to 60% of the population, not just kids who are in school, are some type of tactile kinesthetic learner. And 50 to 60% of the population, it might be even higher, I might have some statistics on that later on, are those curious, imaginative, spontaneous people. So we have to provide for their needs. It's not being done so much in traditional school, but if you're homeschooling, you can certainly do it. Now, these are ways that students get in trouble for their modality needs. So for example, I talked about the verbal. They need to say it. And so often when they're talking, they just know. And so they start talking, and then they get scolded for that or told not to talk out loud. The visual, the picture, people need to see it. And if they can't, then they can get in trouble because they're not doing their work, or they're not understanding it, or they're not paying attention, or that's how it's being interpreted. And then of course, the movement people, they often get in trouble because they need to touch everything and they need to do stuff, or they need to doodle, and it's all often frowned upon. So instead of frowning, we can encourage it. I often have families in my office who are there for the first time, and we're going over their self-portrait results. And the child just starts to grab. I have little squeeze balls and all kinds of different things in my office, but often before they, I give them something, they start to grab something, even a pen, and they, they're just doing this. And the parent is like embarrassed and going, "Stop that. Look at her, listen to her." And I'm going, "No, it's okay. He needs to do that to focus." And they go, like the kid looks at me like, "Whoa, somebody finally gets it." It's not that they're being disrespectful. It's it's like knitting. For those of you who knit, it's like when you're knitting, your brain is free to listen or think. And that's the same idea for our students. Okay, so interests are our greatest motivators. A person will work hard and long when the topic is of interest. They'll get up early if they're not even morning people. They'll, they'll study things that they wish they didn't have to study in order to do the thing that's interesting to them. So whenever possible, focus on interests. They will drive learning like nothing else. They can even outdo talents. There have been many studies of Olympic winners or people even who go to the Olympics who were not the most talented in that area, in their family, but they had the most interest. So whenever possible, allow students to link learning to their interests. And please don't do this. They're often considered privileges. You like this, you can't do it until you do this, because then that just really squelches everything for a child. They need to be doing what they love. And besides, that leads to resentment rather than motivation. It backfires, it does not work. Then many students give up on their interests altogether. And they can grow to be adults who have no idea what they like or believe that their interests have no value. Instead, let's do something like this: the chemistry of cooking, the history of horses, the physics of skateboarding, a photo journal for literature, skits, games. All of these are alternatives. If you Google any of this, there's tons of stuff. Chemistry of cooking, there are all kinds of fun books and different programs for that. Any topic really you can find nowadays. The environment can greatly affect our ability to think, learn, and work. This is easily taken for granted. We don't often think about the environment, but often just simple changes can make a big difference. So again, you'll be able to see these slides later. And I'm just going to go through this quickly. We have background sounds, body position, lighting, temperature, colors, time of day, groupings, snacks. All of this can affect a student's learning. For some students, something might not matter. Like for you, it might not matter whether there's music, noise, or quiet. You can just do whatever at any time. But for somebody else, they might absolutely need some music in the background, or somebody might need total quiet, etc. So it's not like you have to do every single one of these all the time. You just need to help your kids figure out what are the crucial things that they need and how to best provide for those. And of course, the preferences of traditional schools: be quiet, sit up at a desk, and be alone. As you saw, I'm just going to go back for 1 second here. Body position can be sitting, reclining, standing. You can work alone or in twos, threes, or small groups, if there is a small group. But anyway, there are lots of options here. The talents are our natural gifts. These are things that are just easy. They come easily. We kind of stand out for those, but people are not always interested in pursuing their talents. So we need to be careful about that too. Not force students to pursue talents they're not interested in, or failing to encourage students to, like, sometimes a student is talented in something and loves it as well, is interested, but the adults are thinking, well, that's no kind of a job. We kind of talked about that a little bit at the beginning. So here are the talents that we have in our system. Again, you can look at this slide later. If any of you who are on this webinar have already used the self-portrait with your kids through the Homeschool Buyers Co-op, then you know that all this information is accessible to you too, because not on slides like this, but there are all the guides that come with the self-portrait, so that when you're finished, you can click on all those things and get all of this information. So we've got some laws for successful learning to occur. Learning doesn't have to hurt. Success leads to more success, and coaching brings out the star. And this approach leads to engagement, motivation, confidence, endurance, contribution, and all kinds of wonderful things. Now, we do have a book, Discover Your Child's Learning Style, I co-authored with Victoria Hodson. It's available anywhere. It's also on Kindle. And then these are my ebooks, Learning Doesn't Have to Hurt and What to Do When They Don't Get It. Shirley mentioned at the beginning. So you can go to my website, schoolatohomemadeeasier.com, to see all of these products. And I also do consulting and coaching for homeschoolers. So these are the 5 dimensions again that we just went through. And the self-portrait, I just wanted to remind you, if you are interested in that, it is available at the Homeschool Buyers Co-op. They're $19.95 each. On our website, they're $35. So it's quite a savings. And that is the code. And again, you can look at the slide later. This is a page on Homeschool Buyers Co-op that has, I mean, I just took a shot of the upper part, but this is the page that has the description of the dispositions and different things that you can do. And I think they have the modalities up too. And that's the website for it. I just put a few of these here. You can read them later. What a difference when I work with my 9-year-old son and his learning style, delight and motivation. This one says, we've been so incredibly thrilled with the whole assessment. It's the most wonderful thing, fantastic experience. It's going to make a world of difference for my daughter. I can't tell you how much struggle and frustration we've had for years. So people have been using it for many, many years, and it's really made a difference, especially for homeschoolers. And so here's my final thought, and then I will put other slides up if you want. I mean, I'll go back to some and answer any questions. So I love this. This is called You Are a Marvel by Pablo Casals. Each second we live is a new and unique moment of the universe, a moment that will never be again. And what do we teach our children? We teach them that 2 and 2 make 4 and that Paris is the capital of France. When will we also teach them what they are? We should say to each of them, do you know what you are? You are a marvel. You are unique. In all the years that have passed, there's never been another child like you. Your legs, your arms, your clever fingers, the way you move. You may become a Shakespeare, a Michelangelo, a Beethoven. You have the capacity for anything. Yes, you are a marvel. And when you grow up, can you then harm another who is like you, a marvel? You must work, we must all work to make the world worthy of its children. Okay, so I will go back to that slide. The one about the positive things.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see, how can I do that easily? I don't know. I think I have to
Probably hit back.
Oh, wait, you know what? Let me do it like this. Oh, okay, here we go. I'll just start it again and go to that slide.
I have some questions coming up.
Okay.
Let's see. It says, why the age 8 for the assessment? I have 6 and 7-year-olds.
Because they have to be able to understand a certain level. They don't have to be able to read well. So if you have an 8-year-old that doesn't read well, or even older kids, you can actually read the whole thing to them because it's not like a test, you know, they have to read it themselves and all that. You want them to really understand what's being asked so that the answers will be accurate. But, you know, I'll say there are a few 7-year-olds that can do it, but mostly not. So that's why we say 8 years old. Now, we do have a younger version that the parents fill out for the student based on your observations for the younger kids. You know what? That's not available. I should talk to them about putting that one up for people that have younger kids. I never thought of that. I mean, it's available on our website, but we can work with homeschool buyers to get
That'd be
that.
great.
Yeah.
And what's the age range for that?
That's just preschool. It's any
Oh,
lower
well, I
than
would be
8.
interested in
Yeah,
that.
yeah, you could do it for your 3-year-old
Yeah,
based on
yeah,
your observations. And
right.
the thing with that is you just buy one because you make copies of the actual thing. It's like a little booklet. And then you can have, like, mom, dad, maybe grandparents or whoever fill out their version to see, are you all agreeing? Are you seeing the same thing? Do you see different things? So that's
Right.
kind of fun too. Until they're ready to take it themselves, you could do that.
Good.
Okay, I'm going to find the positive comments
Oh, sure.
while you
And
tell me what
sure. And then in the chat box, everyone, I just put the link to where you can purchase the self-portrait power traits assessment on our website, as well as what Mariaemma was discussing. It was like a learning styles overview that goes over the different styles. I do have another question. It says, how do you have a high schooler learn using their learning style when there are tests based on the textbook material and they learn best kinesthetically, audience, auditory, and with other people? My son has difficulty retaining information.
So that's a long question. Can I see that question or what?
Let's see. It says, I think you can. Here, how do you have a high schooler learn using their learning style when there are tests based on the textbook material and they learn best kinesthetically, audience, auditory, and with other people? My son has difficulty retaining information.
Okay, so I wish I could talk to this person because I don't know. There's some things I don't know. Do you have to go with that curriculum? Is it a text-based curriculum? Are you connected to a homeschooling program that requires that curriculum? Because you don't have to use it if you're not connected with a program that requires it, or you might switch programs if that program requires it, because it's only going to be frustrating for your child. And was that a he?
He. And
He
they said it's text-based connected with a co-op.
Yeah, so I would really consider changing, because he's never going to feel like he shines if he needs to learn in a different way. And testing doesn't have to just be by reading or the traditional testing, but that's what you get in a traditional program. So I would really recommend that you think about doing something different for him. The kids just thrive and shine and come up with so much confidence when they can see that they really can learn, but it has to just be done in a different way.
Okay. And then let's see. So you mentioned in the assessment, and that's just one per child, right? One assessment per child when they
Yes, the one that's online for the 8-year-olds up, because they take it online and it's just one. I mean, it's done. When it's done, it's done. It's their results.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think you mentioned previously earlier that there are some additional resources that come with the assessment, the
Yes,
ones that were shown in your PowerPoint.
yes, because when you complete that assessment, then the results page has a section on the results page that says, download this guide, download this, download that. So there's all kinds of information there.
Okay, great. Let's see. Well, let's see. If you'd like to continue, go ahead and type in any questions that you have in the chat box. Mariaemma, to the webinar poll questions in the beginning, let's see. For your first question, are you completely confident about homeschooling? We do have a lot of people say no, and
Okay.
still a few people that say yes. Hopefully, this helped encourage their confidence. Question number 2, do you sometimes worry that your kids aren't learning what they need to? Most everybody said yes.
Okay.
And should school be rigorous or customized for your child's interests and strengths? And most people agree with it being customized, which goes back to,
Oh, great.
organization and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
good.
And the
Let's
biggest
see.
concern, are people putting in their biggest concern?
Yes,
Anybody?
so if you don't mind just putting your, you can fill in this question in the chat box. What is your biggest concern? Someone had said that their biggest concern is the balance between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, i.e. how to achieve an excellent education while nurturing a profound lifelong love of learning.
Yes, we have really big questions.
Yes.
So the thing is, it's really hard to believe this until you actually see it in front of your very own eyes. But the more you work with their strengths and their interests, the more they will be prepared for lifelong learning and love of lifelong learning, because that's what instills confidence, motivation, energy for, doing things, and for feeling that you are valuable in the world.
Mhm.
So the more your kids are experiencing success in, like, oh wow, I can do this. Oh look, I learned this. Oh, I love this topic and I can do this and this and this. That's what you want. Because it doesn't matter if they get the information from a textbook or YouTube. It really doesn't matter. It's what they need as the medium for learning that matters.
Mhm.
And so somebody wrote in the chat, well, I hope that kind of answers the question. I do coaching and consulting. If somebody wanted to talk to me for one time or 10 times, somebody might want a session just to get a little more confidence in yourself for what you're doing. What are some good resources for alternative methods of teaching spelling? So the only one really I have is actually on Homeschool Buyers Co-op, and it's one that we created, and it's called Link Up to Spelling for Weird Words. And it's a system. It teaches you how to teach your children to make their own visual cue cards for words that don't make sense. So this has to, it can be done with kids who already get how to spell phonetically. So they have to understand how, that letters go together. So if they can spell phonetically, and in fact, if they spell weird words phonetically, like the word though, T-H-O-U-G-H, if your kids are spelling it T-H-O, which is what it should be, then that is a perfect program for you, because they will be making their own visual cue cards with little sketches, drawings, pictures, whatever, and it teaches you to do that. So Link Up to Spelling. When you go to the assessment page, the other 3 products that we have are there as well.
Yeah,
So
they're at the
maybe
bottom.
sometime we can have a webinar about spelling. That would be fun.
Yes. Some other people's concerns are adapting to college professors. So that, yeah. And then another concern would be, my biggest concern is not doing enough to prepare them education-wise compared to their peers, public school friends, and family members.
Okay, so on the second one, if you do what I'm telling you, they're going to be so far ahead of all the public school or any school kid, because it's going to be information they really understand, they get it, and they retain it. I got all A's in school, I don't know anything. I just memorized everything for the test, all through school, high school, whatever, college, because you have a test, you take it, you forget it. The minute that you take it, you get your A, and then you forget everything because now you have to study for the next test. That is not a good way of learning. Now, that is maybe what they might have to do in college. However, colleges are not exactly the same as high school and elementary school. And so my answer for that one about adapting to college professors is pick the ones that match your learning style, or really research the colleges. There are so many. And, read and go visit them and maybe sit in a class, because you can find colleges that teach very differently, where they really support hands-on people and different kind of learning than just reading a textbook and taking a test. So you want to customize that too. Help your kids be confident that they will find the thing they need. They don't have to go to that place because so-and-so goes there. They can find the thing that matches them, that will work for them, that goes for a job, that goes for anything in their lives.
Good, great. Another person's concern is just basically helping their child engage and discover interests and confidence.
Okay, well, I mean, that would be the same thing if they've already, sometimes people are homeschooling and their kids have already gone to traditional school, and maybe they have some, beliefs already about themselves from having been there, and you have to turn it around.
Mhm.
So a lot of times when I'm coaching families, I call it detox. So like, for example, if they were failing math, we don't do math for a while. We just stop math because it makes you throw up, or you know what I mean? So you can't learn anything else, even if you're afraid all the time about your math. So I'm just using math as an example. It could be anything. So we don't do it. Sometimes we don't do it for a whole year. And then of course they need it because they're figuring out, maybe they're cooking and have to have double the recipe or whatever. So now they have to do it in real life, but they don't recognize it as, oh, I'm doing math. And then little by little, you bring it back in. So those are some of the things that you might need to do. Meanwhile, really encourage what they love to do. And if they've forgotten what it is, then you have to just be gentle and help them come back to what they really love, and do that most of the time. Like that book, The Power of Focus, said, Mark Victor Hansen and Jack Canfield, concentrate on what you are good at.
Well, I think those are all the questions that we have so far today. I hope everybody, took away something today. All the information you presented today, Mariaemma, was very interesting. Learned a
Okay.
lot too that I could apply as well. My own
Yeah,
son.
you can
So
start early.
yeah.
So the question that was up earlier, how do you encourage a kid who lacks
Oh yes.
motivation in school,
Mhm.
in schoolwork, period? This kid would rather do social media all day. So I hope we've kind of answered that. The more you can get to their interest, and if social media isn't interest, of course you don't want them to be doing that all day, but turn it into something. Talk to your student about it. How can we incorporate this? I mean, there could be research about social media and what are the
It
best
could be
ways for,
different. It could be
yeah,
different parts of social media, maybe like
different
video
parts.
or yeah.
How do businesses use social media? I mean, it might come in handy for that student. Maybe
Right.
they would start their own business. So what they're interested in will motivate them. See if you can incorporate that. And then, I'll be glad to give you more ideas if you want to email me or give me a call.
Okay. Well, I just want to thank everybody for attending our webinar today. Like I mentioned earlier, everybody will get a follow-up email with the recorded link to this webinar. This will also be accessible on our website, so you can watch that later as well. And we'll be hosting another webinar next month, so be sure to check back on our website for more details. Mariaemma, thank you so much for
You're welcome.
being with us today. We learned so much, and I really appreciate your time.
You're very welcome.
Okay, thank you. Hope everyone has a great day. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.